Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Y'all thought I might miss this, did you? Just kidding. Sorry I was late, Mr. Speaker. I was at the Board of Governors meeting. Too much to do in one day. Members, I am standing here before you humbly asking for your consideration for the concerns that have come by those in opposition to this really intentionally positive bill. And I say that because I think the intention of those who have filed it is absolutely golden. We have a concern about the impact of social media on our young people. We have heard testimony in committee spaces. We've heard, of course, the thoughts of the bill sponsors themselves. And I honor that, and I respect that, and I truly do appreciate your concern, and of course, just find the solution that you propose to be way too broad and casting a wide net with unintended consequences. And I know that some of these points were already made yesterday on the House floor when it comes to parental rights and giving parents the opportunity to make these decisions, to be a part of their child's social media experience. And I do want to give credit to this legislative body and our leadership who have championed social media literacy in our schools to make sure that there's an educational component to how to prevent risky behavior online, how to react to cyberbullying, and of course, how to protect your privacy. And this body has also passed transformational policies when it comes to data privacy of our minors as well. So we've done some great work in that regard, and I want to give big credit for that. But some of the concerns that we've heard on this bill are just too much for me to ignore, and I especially want to give acknowledgement to members of the LGBTQ+ community. And I know there are obviously many who do think the bill is positive, but there's an overwhelming number of people who testified in committee, organizations like the Trevor Project and others, who have expressed a lot of concern. Because as Representative Gottlieb mentioned, social media also has a lot of good. And I shared a little bit of my own experience yesterday, but of course, the clock ran out on me. And so I'll share a little bit more today. You know, I was 13 years old when my mom passed away after a long fight to cancer, and it was 20 years ago today. So when I look back 20 years ago today, I honestly, it's remarkable to me that I'm still standing because just how huge that loss was and continues to be for me and my family as we navigate every day, missing her and thinking about her. But the environment that I was able to find online was so incredibly comforting. If you can believe it or not, I was incredibly shy until 3rd grade. If you can believe it, I broke my shyness in 3rd grade. And I also was a very awkward kid. Maybe you can believe that. But I literally had trouble making friends. My sister was my best friend. I didn't have a large friend group. So social media was a friend group for me. I was able to meet people going through similar situations like I was. I was a very late bloomer to MySpace. I thought I was too cool for MySpace. I didn't get onto Facebook till 2010. But I don't know where I would be if I didn't have those environments like LiveJournal, Greatest Journal. Those spaces actually helped me become a better writer, a better communicator. And those digital skills are so important for kids right now. Truly, to be able to communicate yourself without just using acronyms all day, right? Like to actually communicate on social media platforms and to process ideas, to learn new things. That's also really transformational to the point where some people have made a business out of it. They make more money than I ever will make in a lifetime, right, on these platforms. And so yesterday we offered a few other proposals that took a different approach. And I do hope that, we'll see how the courts play out on this, but we shouldn't just ignore the issue if for some reason this path forward doesn't work out. Because I think it is a serious issue that we need to provide oversight and regulation. But that doesn't have to be a complete all-out ban, where many of our most vulnerable kids are not going to have a space to be themselves, to find affirming environments. Well, of course, we also cannot ignore the need to address issues like self-esteem, body image, self-harm. And I'll tell you, when I was in middle school and high school, we also had issues of body image, self-harm. To some degree, these issues are not new. I think it's fair to say social media has made a bad situation worse. But I think it's so important for us to empower parents to pursue policies that center on integrating mental health resources more intentionally and substantially to our schools, to bring back social emotional learning and conflict resolution, and to not take away this tool of communication from our young people, not just because they have a First Amendment right, but because it truly is a space that has the potential. It's a space that already has done a lot of good and has the potential to do more good if we can reduce the harm. And I think there are other ways to reduce the harm. So that, Mr. Speaker, I ask everyone to consider a no vote on this bill today, and I do appreciate the opportunity to share my perspective on it.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, I offered an amendment that mimicked the language of the Arkansas bill. And that specific amendment relates to parental rights. Allowing parents to have the ability to make decisions on how they parent their child is the reason we passed HB1 last year. It's the reason we passed so many bills from this chamber, the chamber across the hall, that eventually make it on the desk of the governor. And in this bill, we're saying parents have no ability at all to make the ultimate decision. Where do we stop? When we saw the 15-week abortion ban, it was said that we're not going to go any further. Then we saw the six-week abortion ban. Then this session, we have a bill that calls for a complete ban. Where is it going to stop where we tell parents, no, we in this body know better than you for your child? Yesterday, I mentioned a segment on Joy Reid's Readout show where she had a guest, the co-founder of Moms for Liberty, and she made a very interesting point that I actually agreed with. And her point was parents are the experts for their children. And I never thought I would agree with the co-founder of Moms for Liberty, but here I am, agreeing that parents should have the ultimate decision-making ability for their child. And so I 100% agree with the bill sponsors' position of making sure that we protect children. I 100% agree, but it should not come at the cost of parents being able to make the ultimate decision in how they raise their child. I also have concerns about the First Amendment and the infringement upon...
Members, I would ask you to take your conversations into the bubble and give Representative Gant your attention, please. Thank you. You recognize Representative Gant.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also have concerns about the First Amendment and how we're infringing upon the free speech and what considerations there are in regards to the constitutionality of that portion of the bill. We see this bill being introduced and passed in other states and going into litigation and being enjoined in other states by courts who have deemed it unconstitutional. And so we have the ability to make sure that we do protect kids. One, we have the ability to learn from the mistakes of other jurisdictions and actually put in safeguards that would make this bill constitutional or would dispel the unconstitutional concerns that are present in this bill. So with those reasons and the reasons of my colleague, Rep. Campbell, that he stated before, I will be down on this bill today. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Members, the intent of this bill is putting in measures that are deemed safe for minors on social media, which sounds good. I believe we should protect our youth. I also believe that social media companies can do more to protect our youth. I see firsthand how the emotional health has impacted our kids in social media. The social media present when used ineffectively. However, I want to raise concerns around this bill. One is the parental rights. A parent's legal authority to make decisions about their child's care, custody, and discipline. As a state, with this bill, we are telling parents you are not fit to be a parent to make the best decision for your child. This is a complete governmental overreach. The second concern I have with this bill is enforcement. How are we going to enforce this bill? If we cannot enforce lower property insurance for our Floridians, how can we make sure that this bill stands a chance against social media companies? And lastly, this bill limits creativity of this generation. And I'm gonna give you an example. In 2015, there was a 4-year-old kid by the name of Ryan who was watching kids review toys. He turned to his parents and asked them, why is all these kids on YouTube and he not on YouTube as well? And so with the assistance of his parents, they developed Ryan's Toys Review. Within the first year of doing this toy review, he earned $3 million. Now called Ryan World, in 2023, his network is $140 million. Under this bill, if Ryan was a Floridian, we would delete his account. When asked by the bill sponsor made it clear that entrepreneurship by way of social media is not allowed. I don't mean to punch down on this, but I do want to put this into context. Each generation, from the baby boomers on down to the millennials, has their battles, good, bad, or indifferent. The thing that sets us apart is also the thing that gives us the commonality amongst us. We are all faced with issues that impact our mental health, and we all have gone through something or is going through something. And it's no different for Gen Z and Gen Alpha. Technology is everywhere. It's all around us, and it's in this generation. It's their thing. Supporting our children comes in more ways than removing social media. So don't limit their advancement by telling them they can't use it, because ultimately they are going to use it. So I ask that you vote down on this bill and allow us to put in protections that make sense and allow for us to see the growth in our economy. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So as I was saying, I'm not opposed to the bill. I'm not opposed to controls as it relates to social media. However, what I am opposed to is the very broad brush that we're utilizing here in a constitutional scheme. And what we're saying is essentially that kids don't have the right to assemble, which is a First Amendment protected right. And that when we take that from somebody, okay, when we take that from somebody, it has to be the least restrictive means. Now, the definition of least restrictive means is the one that restricts individual freedom to the least extent possible after taking into account other informative concerns and values. And so I think we all understand, and nobody wants kids to be trafficked. But let's face it, in the real world, kids are trafficked without the internet. We do what we can in that regard, and we should do what we can as it relates to internet crimes as well. You're not necessarily solving the problem by taking away the internet. As well, we heard from many of the stakeholders, and this is my most major concern with this policy. We heard from the stakeholders who came to the committee and said, I didn't kill myself because I found a self-help group on the internet. I'm going to tell you that when I became sober about 8 years ago, the first room that I went to was intherooms.com. I was afraid. I was scared. I didn't want to out myself, okay? So what I did was I looked for an online forum, and we know that kids do that themselves today. I've spoken to several psychologists who all told me they feel that this bill is a bad idea because we're taking that outlet away from kids, and in fact, chasing them into their cell phones where they're going to be cliquish, talk about one another, and they're not going to have the ability to discuss in a social forum things that they want to discuss. I'm also very concerned. I've got family that has developmental disabilities. And people who have social anxiety and developmental disabilities don't necessarily relate socially in the real world as they do on social media. And I think this full prescription without letting parents have a say is potentially harmful to our children. I do agree that there's something that we should do as a state. I do agree that there's something that we should do to protect children. But what we have to do is put in guardrails, not a wall. And the bill just goes a step too far, in my opinion, and I respectfully urge you to vote no.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, my amendment is the language from the Arkansas bill that recently passed that is similar to this bill. And the point of this language is to allow parental consent. So in this bill, there is no option for parents to make the ultimate decision for their child. And so this amendment—
Members, please give Representative Gant your undivided attention, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So this amendment gives parents the choice.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. I, too, want to thank Rep. Gant for this amendment, this wonderful amendment. I am a former DCF attorney, and my role as a DCF attorney was oftentimes to terminate parental rights. This is not an instance where we need to be taking away the rights of a parent. So I thank you so much for offering this great amendment. Give the parents the choice. Give the parents the opportunity to parent as they deem appropriate. Thank you so much, Rep. Gant.
And I just want to thank Representative Gant for actually bringing this amendment. As an educator, when I started, I didn't have this bill in committee, but I started hearing about it, and I was very concerned because social media, we do need to pay attention to what's happening with our children. However, I was kind of conflicted because I do believe that parents need to be able to parent their child. We can't legislate everything. So when I'm listening to this amendment, it really gives me hope that we would actually vote this amendment up, and it gives me that opportunity to support this type of legislation because it does allow the parent to actually parent. I understand that, you know, we're concerned as the larger community, as the state. However, we cannot continuously go into people's families and into their houses to try to do their jobs. I believe we're supposed to help them and aid them in doing that. But this should not be something that we just completely take away from the parent to be able to do. So I'm hoping that you all would support this amendment. I think that it's a great amendment. I thank you, Representative Gant, for filing this amendment because it would allow us to actually support this piece of legislation, but also give the parents their opportunity to do what they need to do.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate it. Representative Gant, I really like this amendment. I think it's common sense, and I'm going to keep it really simple. I think it gives the rights back to the parents. In essence, it's parental rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the bill sponsors, I absolutely understand the intent of your bill, and I agree that there needs to be some regulations. What my concern is the government telling parents how to parent their child and taking away the complete ability for them to make that decision. Rep. Rayner often says a broken clock is right twice a day, right? And I found myself agreeing with the co-founder of an organization that was on Joy Reid's show recently, and her one of the things she said at the end was parents are the best experts for their kids. Now, that's an arguable statement, but do I think that the government should have this ability to absolutely take this decision away from their parents? No. And so this amendment gives parents the ability to opt in. Again, we know that social media is not going anywhere. It's a part of our existence, it's a part of our lives, and it's a part of the kids' lives. And so regulating it and allowing kids to still be kids, great. I am all for that. But telling parents that they have absolutely no ability to make that decision in accordance to how they want to raise their kids, I disagree with that. And the language of this bill it mimics the language from the Arkansas bill that was passed in Arkansas and signed into law.
So members, some of the discussion we've had with our constituents and of course with colleagues on both sides of the aisle and caucus members has been just around the age, 16 being the age that the prohibition established at. So all this amendment does is it changes the age from 16 to 13. So it keeps everything in place, the verification of age process, the ability for parents to, have the termination of an account, the cause of action language, the concerns of addictive behavior. So all that stays the same, but it just embraces the feedback from families. And of course, we've heard some concerns about, folks that their economic endeavors are on social media, whether they're selling products or, influencers and so forth. So it just provides a little bit more freedom for kids in those age ranges, and that's all the amendment does, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I just want to thank you, Rep. Escamani, for bringing this amendment, because I feel like it is the type of compromise amendment that we need. We can all certainly recognize and appreciate the desire to protect our children and to make sure that, kids get to be kids. At the same time, 13 seems like a more appropriate age here. Because by the time you're 16, you can drive a car. By the time you're 16, you can pre-register to vote, I do believe. By the time you're 16, you can have a job, right? There are many things that you can do, and we certainly should make sure that we are, yes, protecting our kids, but doing this in an age-appropriate way. So I'll be up on your amendment today. Thank you.
I will recognize that there are harms caused by social media, but I think a lot of studies point out that, age 13 is an appropriate time. 13 and under is an appropriate time to put restrictions. I think it's just overreaching. Like I said, we expect teenagers of 16 to be able to raise a child, work dangerous jobs, and then we're telling them that they can't conduct themselves on social media. I think that 13 is a really good compromise where we're really looking out for the safety of the children without kind of reaching too far in to the personal lives and homes of families. So I think this is a good amendment. Thank you so much for bringing it, Representative Escamani.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Soroy, then even your answer suggests that there are less restrictive means, such as some kind of content regulation or some kind of algorithm regulation or something else that we could do rather than an entire prohibition for Representative Rayner, rather than an entire prohibition against the use of social media by children.